Thank you. If we had some good ushers, we could usher those people out of here. Come on, Mark. Shocker. Of course. Just pushing down the stairs. All right, Bible students, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 13 and, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, chapter 14 tonight. All right, so let's jump right into chapter 13 with the first 5 verses. Who would like to read those verses for me?
There arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign of wonder. And the sign of the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, Let us go after other gods which thou hast not known, let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God proveth you to know whether ye love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. You shall walk after the Lord your God and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice. You shall serve him and cleave unto him. That prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he hath spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage. So thrust thee out of the way which the Lord thy God commanded thee to walk in, so shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee.
Thank you, Jerry. Now wait just 1 minute. This sounds to me like we got a prophet here who prophesies something or dreams a dream, and it comes to pass. Doesn't that mean the prophet is a real prophet and you should listen to him? Let's look at chapter 18 and verse 20 and 20 or 21 and 22. And when you say in your heart, how shall we know the words which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously, and you will not be afraid of him. So it seems like we got a little contradiction here. So if a prophet prophesies something and it comes true, isn't that a sign that he's a true prophet of God? I'm sorry, a little louder? Well, how can you prophesy something and it comes true? Huh. One of Pharaoh's magicians. Okay. Okay. Well, if it came true, then doesn't he have the credibility to tell you to go after other gods? Okay. I would imagine. Yes. what a great point. Aren't there real prophets of God that may at times say the wrong thing? Can we think of one? Yeah. And there's another one, famous Balaam, who was paid by Balak, the king, to go curse the Israelites. He was a true prophet of God, the Bible tells us. So Ronnie's point's a good one. You can be a prophet and not speak the right things. Leighton. That's one of the reasons I love being here. Leighton Curtis. So what if I prophesy, hey, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and you wake up and the sun comes up? Do I have a right to tell you don't follow God but go after this idol? No. I think that's what Moses is really saying, is that even if a real prophet tells you something and it comes true, and then they tell you go after false gods, you better not listen to him. And as Daron says, verse 3 literally says it's a test. God is allowing these tests from time to time, and it reveals Israel's true love and their heart and their dedication and their devotion to him and their willingness to stay in this covenant relationship with him and not go after other gods. Is there anything in the New Testament that sounds anything like that to you? Ronnie? If we or an angel of God preaches unto you any gospel other than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed. And then Paul says it again. So, that's pretty similar, and that's the point of this passage, is that even a prophet of God can misspeak and not represent God at times. And if even a prophet or an angel is telling you go after false gods, don't listen to him. But instead, in this case, what? Kill him, put him to death, right? So again, Moses is emphasizing yet again, in yet another way, how important it is to keep the first two commandments of the covenant, the Shema. There is one God, and him only shall you serve, and don't go after any idols. And that's one of Moses' constant themes as we go through this book, and he prepares to come to the end of his life and pass the mantle on to Joshua. He's pounding this message over and over and over again. Stay away from idols. Okay? Any questions about these 5 verses? All right. It's not like it's not said in other places. We're not going to take the time to read this. But, you know, Jesus talks about false prophets doing wonders, being able to do specific wonders. And we already talked about Galatians 1, reject even an angel. So the test of a prophet was not the ability to do signs and wonders. The test of a prophet was, are they preaching the truth? Are they telling you what's congruent with the covenant that I've already told you to keep? That's the point. All right. Does God allow us to face tests to reveal the sincerity of our love? He certainly did with Abraham, didn't he? Didn't he test Abraham's faithfulness, whether he was willing to sacrifice even his only son? And in this case, he allows prophets to prophesy and then tell people, hey, let's go worship Baal this weekend. We've got a big party going on up the hilltop. So does God put those tests or allow those tests in our lives? Pardon me? Allows them? Okay. Anybody think of an example? Jerry?
Daily challenge
So God allows us to be tempted in all kinds of ways to test our faithfulness. Yes, Sandra. Great point. Yeah, I can't tell you how many people in my private practice have been angry with God because of their own expectations that didn't come true. Somebody that was supposed to get well and they died, somebody that was supposed to be kept safe and they were in a car wreck. Whatever it is, we have expectations of God, but God has expectations of us as well, and He does test our faith. All right, let's keep rolling. Look at verses 6 through 11. Who wants to read those for me? Okay, so Moses ups the ante even more. First, we're talking about a prophet. Now we're talking about one of your own family members. If my cherished wife comes to me and says, hey, the Hittites, the next county over are having a Molech festival this weekend. Sounds kind of fun. What do you think? Well, that would be tough to stone her. We don't have to worry about that sort of thing because we're not under the law of Moses. But these people are literally told, if a family member comes to you and tries to seduce you away from following the one true God, and Moses again keeps making the point, the God that brought you out of slavery, the God that redeemed you with His outstretched hand, His mighty arm, even a family member is to be put to death. Wow. Sounds kind of harsh. In some cases, whole families were wiped out. In this case, just the one that's trying to draw you away to false gods is to be stoned. What do you think about that? Sandra? You're just a rule follower, aren't you? Yeah, we don't have a right. Yeah, we really just do not have a right to question God's judgment, His fairness, His honor, none of those things. Yeah, it would take one, and word would get out, and there would be no more trying to go to the party next door. So, yeah, quick and swift judgment. And on top of that, look at verse 9. Your hand shall be the first against him. You're going to throw the first stone. I got to pick up a stone and throw it at my wife first if she tries to seduce me away from following God. That's a tough thought, but that was the hardness of the old law. And if people followed the law as they should, these things don't happen much because word gets out. So this public execution served to purge the evil from the nation and instill fear in others. That's exactly what verse 11 says. Yeah, Harold? And we need to remember that we're serving the God of the Old Testament covenant as well as the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And the New Testament says, behold the goodness and severity of God. We can't forget the severity part. Jerry? Sin is fun. Remember, we talked some about the gods they served on Sunday morning. Parties, sensuality, just powerful emotions, lots of carnal reasons that people would go after false gods and participate in that kind of culture. It's very difficult for me to understand, given where these people have come from and all of the history that Moses has reminded them of over and over and over again, why they would ever even be tempted to. But we're all people, and we all have weaknesses, and they have seductions with these false gods. Yeah. And when they went into the land and didn't drive out everybody, it wasn't very long before they were right in the middle of idolatry all over again. They didn't follow through on what Moses and God told them to do. Exactly. There is a mob mentality aspect to idolatry and some of the cultural practices of the people that followed certain gods and did certain things as a part of that worship, for sure. Okay. So Jesus himself said, whoever loves father or mother more than me will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And in another place, we're even told to hate our family in order to be his disciple. I think that means love less, but it's the same thought. God is a jealous God. He wants us to love him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and not be in any way curious about or participate in anything other than serving him. And that principle is followed all the way through the New Testament as well. So in this particular case, when we're talking about family, we all understand that there's family ties and emotional tugs, and God even acknowledges that it would be hard, but he still demands obedience when these things happen. All right, let's look at 12 through 18. Someone read that for me. All right, first we got a prophet that's trying to seduce you away from serving the Lord. Then it's one of your family members. And then you hear about some town up the road somewhere where there's some worthless men that are trying to do the same thing, get people involved in idolatry. And so in this case, we're talking even more severe consequences. Help me understand why, in your opinion, God would tell them to destroy the whole city because some people in that city are trying to draw people away into idolatry. Sandra? So we're talking about very public temptation to go serve other gods and participate in idolatry. And the people of the city apparently know all about this. And when anyone, we just read, even a family member, tries to draw you away into idolatry, they should be killed. But in this case, the city is tolerating it. They know it's happening. They know these guys are out there saying these things. They know they're out there preaching and trying to draw them away into idolatry, and they do nothing. What does that remind you of in the New Testament? Corinth, yeah, where a man had his father's wife. They were tolerating it in the church. Some people were even laughing about it. And instead of dealing with it and disciplining this man in love, they were just yucking it up, and it's like, huh, how about that? So it's the same thing. Yeah, Harold? Yes, and I think it's very similar to the concept of wiping out whole nations, like the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet full, and now it is. So the whole nation is going to die. We all know there are innocent people that weren't horribly evil within the Amorite nation. There were innocent children. Flocks and herds didn't sin, and yet they were told to destroy everything. I think it's the same thing, that when there's this level of sin, and I think it emphasizes just how important it is to God not to participate in idolatry. When there's this level of sin, it needs to be dealt with swiftly and powerfully and completely destroy every vestige of it, to the point that everything in the city of value is heaped in a pile, it's burned, every body is killed, every animal is killed, and you never, ever even rebuild on that site, no matter how pretty it was. Yes? Yes. Yes. Yes, there are some sins that are so horrible, you've got to take drastic action. Yeah, very good point. All right, so we're talking about false prophets and then enticement by loved ones and then apostasy of an entire city because everybody is putting up with it and participating in it. And so the whole city has to be destroyed. It's under a ban, just like Jericho when they went into the Promised Land. The whole city was under a ban. You couldn't take anything of value from there. And this is just a way that God expected them to react to any overture of idolatry to preserve the national purity and ensure that God's mercy and blessing would remain for the rest of the nation so they wouldn't get polluted and become a part of it. So we know that Achan sinned by taking things under the ban in Jericho, and his whole family was killed. Jesus warns the churches in Revelation about tolerating false teaching. It's the same thing. And in Galatians 5 and 1 Corinthians 6, we read about this leavening the whole lump concept, and God is saying through Moses, any of this is not to be tolerated, because if you tolerate any of it, it's going to spread like leaven through a lump of dough. So stamp it out, destroy it, squash it immediately. That's what this whole chapter is about. Comments? All right. So, again, idolatry has been something that these people have experienced in Egypt for 400 years. And there's a tendency to participate in it. And I can't tell you how many times up until chapter 13, Moses is condemning and warning against it. And here he does again. Okay. All right. Here's just some points to think about. The whole point is that holiness must be protected at all costs. And Deuteronomy 13 talks about undivided love for the Lord, for Yahweh. And even when these threats or seductions come from miracles like prophets, or emotional attachments like families, or a whole town that you may know people there, the people of God were told to respond with discernment and resolve and act to protect the covenant and the covenant relationship. All right, that's chapter 13 in a nutshell. Any final questions or comments about this chapter? All right. Let's look at chapter 14. There's three areas where Israel is to demonstrate in this chapter their holiness and their distinctiveness from other nations around them. First, we're going to talk about mourning practices, grieving and mourning, then dietary laws, and then tithing. And so the whole point is you need to start thinking of yourselves as special people, holy people, people that are separate from the nations around you. And remember, this is on the eve of them walking into the promised land and beginning to conquer the promised land. And so part of that is destroying the culture that would lead them away from God. And so that's what we're talking about. Let's look at the first two verses of chapter 14. You are the sons of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor shave your forehead for the sake of the dead. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for his own possession, out of all of the peoples who are on the face of the earth. All right. First of all, this is the first time in the Old Testament that the people are specifically called sons of God, just as today's trivia. The concept is there before that you are God's people, but he never labels them as literally his sons and children. And we're used to that concept in the New Testament as children of God, as part of a family of which God is our head. You know, we are brothers and sisters, sons of God, but this is the first time it talks about that. But the point of these two verses is, you're sons of God. You got to be different from those nations around you. And here's one of the ways that you're supposed to be different. What's wrong with cutting yourself if you're hurting and in emotional pain? Well, you wouldn't make a very good prophet of Baal then. Pardon me? Yes. Yes. And part of worship to idols and part of the culture of the nations around them was to draw blood, to emphasize, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, I'm appealing to God. and you cut yourself and bleed and shed your blood on the ground, and life is in the blood, and we've talked about how holy blood is to God. And I think that's a part of this, that they're supposed to be different and not participate in these carnal cultural practices where you're shedding blood to make a point. I think you can let people know you're hurting without doing that, Moses is saying. And I want you to be different than the people around you. And remember, there's lots of places in the Old Testament where people did that, but probably the most famous is the contest on Mount Carmel with Elijah, where he had the contest with the prophets of Baal, 400, I think. And after a while, their God wasn't doing nothing. No fire, no nothing. So they're yelling and screaming and jumping around and dancing and cutting themselves and bleeding all over the place. And that's supposed to somehow wake up their God and make them listen to him more for some reason. But that was the culture. That was the practice at the time. And Moses is saying, don't do that. You are children of the Lord your God. You're different. So don't participate in these pagan rituals. There is no way there's only 5 minutes. I want a new usher. All right, so don't cut yourself. Don't mutilate yourself. Don't shave your foreheads to show that you're grieving. Just hurt, talk to your family, pray, whatever you need to do, but don't do the things that the nations around you do. All right. And again, there's other places where the people are talked about a treasured possession, a holy nation, a royal priesthood in the New Testament, a holy nation. Lots of symbolism there between the Old Testament and the New. All right. Verses 3 through 21, we're going to blast through this really quick without reading it. It's talking about dietary restrictions and distinctions. Obviously, they're only supposed to prepare slaughtered animals in certain ways to bleed them, make sure they can be eaten without the blood in them. They're not supposed to eat anything that dies naturally. If I go out, and one of my calves died overnight, it might be tempting to put that calf in the freezer, and God says, don't eat anything that dies naturally. It's not slaughtered. So there's clean and unclean animals. And unclean animals, in terms of like mammals running around the earth, are clean only if they split the hoof and chew the cud. What does chewing the cud mean? A cow that has 4 stomachs, they eat a bunch of grass, they go lay down, they burp up what they ate 2 hours ago, chew it up, swallow it, it goes to a different stomach, and they process it that way. They're ruminants, okay? So to be a clean animal, it has to chew the cud and have a split hoof. Here's some of the examples this chapter talks about: oxen, cattle, sheep, goats, deer, gazelles, wild goats, antelopes, and mountain sheep. All of those are ruminants. They chew the cud and have a split hoof. Unclean animals either don't have a split hoof and don't chew the cud, or one or the other isn't there. Like a camel chews the cud, but it isn't a split hoof. It's more of a rounded hoof with kind of toes on it. A rabbit actually chews the cud, not literally as like a ruminant, but tends to look like they're chewing the cud, but it doesn't have a hoof. The rock badger or the hyrax chews the cud, doesn't have a hoof. The pig has a split hoof, doesn't chew the cud. All of those unclean animals. How about unclean fish? To be a clean fish, it's got to have both fins and scales. Give me an example of a fish that doesn't have one or the other of that. A catfish. It has skin. Yeah. Well, kind of glad I don't live under the law of Moses, because every once in a while I just got to have me some fried catfish. But unclean fish, either they don't have fins, they don't have scales, or both. Birds, basically non-predatory birds and birds that aren't scavengers are the clean animals. Birds that prey on other animals, and birds like eagles, hawks, ravens, crows, things like that, or carrion birds like buzzards. None of those are clean animals. Don't eat them. Insects. Did you know you can eat insects under the law of Moses? Locusts, crickets, grasshoppers are all winged insects. They walk on all fours and they have jointed legs that allow them to jump and hop. Those are clean animals. Anything that's not like that is called detestable, and you can't eat it. And so the purpose of all these restrictions are, again, to distinguish the Israelites from the pagans around them and to teach them holiness through their everyday life by being reminded, even in how they set their table, that they are God's people and in a covenant relation with Him. And so that's a good chunk of this section right here. And the last part of this chapter is talking about tithing and being joyful in tithing and setting aside a tithe or a tenth of everything they produce, the first part of what's produced. Set it aside to honor God and support the religious celebration, and also to support the Levites that don't have an inheritance. They can't grow their own food. They don't have any land. So we've got to take care of the Levites and also foreigners, orphans, widows. And so worship and community is all connected, and the whole point is verse 26, rejoice, you and your household. All right, we got through 2 chapters. Good job, guys. We will do chapter 15 on Sunday morning, and possibly 16. Good class. Thank you.
Mark's flicking the light, so I guess it's time. So with my job, I work in the engineering department at my job. And we have a little over 5,000 plus employees in the engineering department. And with that many employees, it's not uncommon to have near misses, accidents, close calls. And when things like that happen, we have what they call a safety stand down. Like if today's Wednesday, if something happened, Wednesday, today, something that was major, they would put out an announcement for a safety stand down, and we would have a meeting by teams. And we would, on this teams meeting, we would go over whatever incident happened and, just go by the steps. They should have done this. This is what caused it. This could have been the results. This was the results. Stuff like that. But a couple of things that I really get out of these our safety stand-down meetings, a thing that really stands out to me is the person that is over the whole engineering department. When he starts this meeting, usually the first thing he says is, today is the most important day of the year on the railroad. And at first, I really didn't understand that because the first time we had that I was involved in a safety stand-down meeting, and he said that, and I just thought, well, I don't really have nothing going on today, but I'm covered up next week, so I don't know what you're talking about. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized what he was saying. Today is the most important day. And so I wanted to reword that phrase for my invitation. So I wanted to word it in a couple of ways. The first way is, what if we said, as a Christian, today is the most important day of the year? Because as a Christian, you have an opportunity today. You have an opportunity today to sow seeds. Just like the parable of the sower in Mark 4, we had an opportunity to sow seeds today and spread the word. We also have an opportunity to let our light shine. Matthew 5, verse 16 says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So we have an opportunity to let our light shine. We also have an opportunity today to encourage each other. First Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Encourage one another and build one another up." And just on a personal note, standing up here and looking out, I see a room full of encouragement, and I'm very thankful for that. We also have an opportunity today to bear one another's burdens. Galatians 6:2 says, "Bear one another's burdens, thereby fulfilling the law of Christ." And it's always good, when we're out in the week and the world presses against us and, we have burdens to bear. It's always good to have someone to lean on. So we have all those opportunities, and those are just a few opportunities that, as a Christian, that we've had today and that we'll have tomorrow too. But now let's reword it in a different way. What if we said, if you're not a Christian, today is the most important day of the year? Because tomorrow is not promised to us. And it's a fearful thing, it's a fearful thought to hear Jesus say one day, "I never knew you, depart from me, you workers of iniquity." But we have an opportunity today that if you'll repent and turn from your sin, that today you have the opportunity that you'll have that hope of eternal life with God in heaven. Today, God can break those chains of sin that have been weighing you down. Today, God can shed the shame and guilt that you may have from carrying your sins around. Today, you have the opportunity to rise up and walk in a newness of life. If you'll just take those steps that are laid out in His Word. Hear, believe, repent, confess, and obey, and be baptized, and then walk up in the newness of life. We have that opportunity today, and we have, things are ready. All things are ready. We have men here available that if you need someone to talk to, someone to pray with you, there's men available here for that. We have a baptistry that's ready to go. If you need to be or desire to be baptized today, all things are ready. So we should always take every opportunity that we have, because today is the most important day, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian. And another phrase that he says at the end of the stand down is he says, let's go out and win the day. So you can win the day today if you'll just follow the things that Christ has laid out if you're not a Christian. And if you are a Christian, you can win the day today by helping those that are around you, help spreading the word, and take every opportunity that you have. So if you're subject to the gospel call, won't you come down as we stand and we sing?